Hey, what's up everybody? Mark Price here, devslopes.com, and today we're going to go into the magical world of the internet. Actually, we're going to make HTTP requests from our skeleton app to a server. In fact, our skeleton server. We're going to have two skeletons talking to each other. How cool is that? What would you call that? Like a skeleton party? These bad jokes are terrible. I can't believe I'm taking this course. Okay, so what I want you to do is go to github.com/github/fetch. That's one screen we're going to need to open here, okay? Because the subject of our application today will be implementing fetch, and fetch is actually maintained by GitHub. Normally, right here, you'll see the name of the company or contributor or creator of the repository. This one's actually maintained by GitHub itself, and this project adheres to the open code of contact by participants. Oh, that's junk. This is what we want. The global fetch function is an easier way to make web requests and handle responses than using an XML HTTP request. If you've ever built pure JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, as we like to say, to talk to servers, you would have used XML HTTP requests. Of course, we all know that jQuery has a wrapper around that and makes it a little bit easier. And this makes it even easier. It's a polyfill. And if you don't know what a polyfill is more or less a feature that should have been adopted into a platform that wasn't, and then was later provided as a third-party thing. So what I'm saying is this is something that everyone wanted browsers to have, and so it's now a polyfill, a third-party, highly popular thing that is now implemented by default in the Google Chrome browser. Okay, enough history. This isn't a history lesson. What the heck am I talking about? Okay, so that's one window I want you to open up. And let's go to github.com/devslopes. Okay, what we're going to be doing is using our Simple Express server and our React skeleton today. Make it nice and easy. And if you have the Simple Express server from a previous lesson that we may have done, you may want to update it and grab this one instead because there are changes on it. So I'm going to click React skeleton, and I'm going to download the zip. Okay, while that's downloading, I'm going to go back and I'm going to click Simple Express Server and I'm going to click Download Zip. Okay, by the way, if you are new to programming, now it is very good to put repositories on GitHub for things that you reuse all the time. Notice how easy it is just to use these skeleton projects here because I don't have to recreate them every time. Okay, so I'm going to double click React Skeleton Master. It's the master skeleton and the Simple Express Server Master. And I'll delete these zip files here. Okay, there we go. Got my two folders there. Looking great. Okay, so I'm going to open up my terminal. Make it nice and big here so you can see. CD desktop. And I'm going to CD into React Skeleton. React-skeleton. There we go. And there we have it. And of course, we know that our skeleton project does not have any type of framework for talking to servers. So if you go back to the github/fetch, okay, it'll tell us how to install it right here. All right. And that is npm. Make sure you're in the directory, in your skeleton directory here. And actually, I'm going to rename this real quick. I'm going to call React skeleton -master. I'm just going to call it HTTP we'll just call it HTTP-fetch. Okay, and I'm using MV, which is this move, but it'll rename it for me there, and CD into HTTP-fetch. Okay, same thing, just change the name. All right, so npm install. Actually, I need to turn my npm on by using the Node Version Manager. So Node Version Manager, use 4.2.2. Now I can say npm install what wg-fetch-save. Okay, of course the --save will save a reference to it in our package.json. Of course, though, we are going to download this and probably submit the entire code itself, the fetch package, to our version control. Okay, there we go. We have it in our project here. And for reference, the implementation of how to use it is right here. They've got some great examples. So if you ever need help, they're right here. Very simple. One of the most simple web request packages I've ever used, and this is not the only one. There's probably 10 to 20 plus popular packages you could use. I'm just showing you this one because it's owned or maintained by GitHub, very popular. So, okay, we've got that going on for us here. All right, so what I want to do is open up the project. So I'm going to say Atom space dot. It's going to open it up in a new window for us here. Okay. And there we have it. And as you can see, this has the list and list item. Okay, remember? And if I double click the index.html file, there's our list: ham, cheese, and potatoes. Sounds like a wonderful meal. Okay, so it's our skeleton framework. All right, so what we're going to do is simply implement fetch and move that data onto a backend and then start communicating from client to server. And in this video, we're just getting the bare bones framework set up for this. Things will change as we go along in this course, but I'm just showing you the basics of how to get it in. So we got list and list items. So since our list encompasses our list items, this is where we're going to want to fetch the data. And so we also have this server, this simple server here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up as well too. So I'm going to go to my terminal, go back into my desktop, and cd into simple-express server master ls, and there's my files. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to say atom space dot. It's going to open up a new window. Okay. So let's move these side by side. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we've got our React skeleton project. On the right-hand side, we've got our simple server. And so what I'm going to do is, it's already here actually. Well, I'm going to delete this here and then show you again from scratch so you can understand what's going on. Okay, so all I want to do is, I'll make this smaller. In my React project over here, I want to take this ingredients, this data that's in our React code, which we don't want there. You don't want to put, remember what I said, you don't want to put mock data in your code because it ruins your code and you're going to get rid of it later anyway. Why waste it and get confused? Let's put it where it belongs, over here in the server. Even if we don't have a real database, the server setup is going to be the same. So I've just pasted over the ingredients into the server here. Okay, and I'm going to create a get or an endpoint here. So app.get, okay, and we're going to call this one ingredients. Function rec for request, res for response. Okay, and what we're going to do is just send back the ingredients. So res.send ingredients, okay? So we're going to send back this array of data, okay? Also, you'll notice up here, if you were curious, is we've got some weird funky stuff going on. Access control allow origin, access control allow headers. By default, the internet protocol, HTTP protocol, denies all requests from unknown clients. And so in our case, we've allowed all requests to come from all clients. We've just made this a very open server. And of course, there's always security concerns, but right now it's just very open, and this is needed so we can make web requests, and that is here. Okay. So there we go. We've got this information here. Now let's create our HTTP request in our React project. So what I'm going to do is in my source here, I'm going to right click and do a new folder, and I'm going to create a folder called services. I like having a folder called services where you have scripts or modules that actually perform something that's like a service, which is what we're doing here. So I'm going to create a new file inside that services folder, and we are going to call this one http service.js. It will not have any React code. It'll be purely JavaScript. Okay, so that's looking good. So what we want to do now is get fetch working, the package that we installed. So var fetch equals require what wg fetch. Okay, so that's how you import it there. And that's looking good to me. In fact, I'm gonna make this a little bigger for right now because we don't need to look at our server for the moment. Our simple server. There we go. There's our fetch. And of course, fetch requires a URL so you can actually hit the server, okay? Whatever server you want to point to, so your requests know where to go. So I'm gonna create something called base URL equals HTTP localhost 6060. And of course, you will change this when your project goes live. This will be your live IP address of your server. And you may have automation, some type of tools that will actually dynamically point to whatever server you want, where you actually don't have to make code changes. But that's out of the scope of this course, a little more complex, and automation can get very complex. So let's just keep it simple. And then let's actually create a service itself. This is just a JavaScript object. But what I want to do is I want to have a get function. When I call this function, I pass in a URL to whatever endpoint I want, and then it gets that data and brings it back. So it's a get request, okay? Part of the HTTP protocol. Or excuse me, it's part of the REST design pattern, get, okay? And so we pass in the URL, and what we're going to do is we're going to use fetch now. We're going to return fetch, and now the first parameter in fetch is the URL that you want to hit. So what we want to do is pass in the base URL plus URL. So what we're saying is, hey, grab this plus whatever URL we're going to put in there. So if I had another URL, you know, like so, we'll call this ugly puppies in case you wanted to get a list of ugly puppies. You know, it might look like this /ugly puppies, and that's what it means right there. So you just pass in, you're concatenating a URL, okay? So we're going to return fetch.base URL. That's going to hit the server, okay? And then when it's done, okay, when the server sends a response, we're going to call .then, and here's a function, okay? And .then, let me just write it out here for a second and then explain it here. So what's happening here is we're calling fetch and it's hitting the server, okay? The .then, all right, is a promise, okay? So if you're not familiar with promises, more or less, it's a JavaScript callback. It's a function that will be called at a later point in time. And so fetch is promising us that it'll send us something back, okay? So that's what's happening here. So fetch is returning a promise, which is an object of some sort. I don't know what their implementation is under the hood. And so all we're doing is using .then. You know, it could have been put up here as well too. Okay, so just think of .then as a function, because that's what it is. So you notice how there's parentheses here. So this is .then is a function that will be called at a later point in time when fetch is completed its request, because it is asynchronous, does not happen immediately. And then it takes as a parameter the function that you want to call when the promise is fulfilled, and it's going to give us a response from the server. Okay, that's what's happening here. So this function right here will be called when the fetch successfully returns what it needs to return. And again, if you are very familiar with HTTP requests, you can speed me up because this is probably a very common thing for you, but just making sure you understand it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to return response.json. Okay, so this response is going to have multiple things. Okay, remember from the how the internet works video, how HTTP requests work. Sorry, I got a fly in here. And basically, you're going to get a response back, and it has different things on it, like a status code, header, any potential header that it might have coming back from the server, just different things like that. And so what we want the JSON out of it, we want to call the JSON function, which is going to grab the data and turn it into something we can use in JavaScript. So that's what's happening here. So going up from the top here, when we call the get function, it's going to return to us a promise. Okay, return is returning promise, because this function right here, fetch, it immediately returns a promise, some type of function that will be called later, and which is right here, this .then. And when that's called, we will, so we're returning the function here that fetch will return to us, and then .then is going to be called when that promise is completed. Okay, and return response.json is actually returning the JSON back to whoever calls get in the first place. So this, whoever calls this is going to get this. Got it? Okay, I know that was long-winded, but I just want to make sure that you understand this, okay? So return response.json, and then what we're going to do, we're going to say module.exports equals service. By the way, if we were doing more than getting, we could also do other things here as well too. We can, do a put request, okay, where you pass in the URL. We could also do a post request and a delete request. That would be common, but in this app, I'm just showing you the simple get request, okay? So module that exports service, okay? And so that looks good to me. And so what I'm going to do now is go back to my list. Okay, and so the list should download a list of items. It used to be here. It's not here anymore. And then once it downloads them, we should set the state, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and import our HTTP service. And I think I'm just going to call it HTTP, just to be short and simple. And this is in our services folder. And since our list is in our components folder, we're going to go up a level and we're going to go into services. We're going to go into HTTP service. And I don't need to put the .js extension because Node will know that automatically. Okay, first things first. We know that we got rid of our ingredients list. So let's go ahead and set get initial state. We need to put the ingredients in the state now since that's where it's coming from and it's dynamic. So get initial state, okay, and this is going to get the initial state of the data. It's only going to be called once, and it's going to initialize the data of the state that we're going to have in our application. And so we're going to return an empty array. Well, we're going to return an object that has an empty array called ingredients. Okay, this is our React components state, and then component will mount. This is the function that you use to make web requests. Okay, this is when the components have finally mounted. Okay, so children are mounted before the parent, so all the children have mounted by this point, and now the component's mounted. What it means is your component is ready to go, living and breathing, and now you can make your web request so you can populate it with data. Okay, all web requests should be done here. Okay, and so we're going to do http.get, and we're going to call ingredients, or excuse me, we're going to pass in ingredients. Okay, then we're going to do .then because that's a promise that was returned to us. Okay, and okay, so .then, and so let's go back over here to our HTTP service. Okay, so we're going to get this JSON. Okay, well, first we're going to get the promise. Okay, then this is going to be called, and then it's going to return this. Okay, it's going to return a promise to us with the data inside of it, and so this is going to be that JSON right here. Okay. So this is what we're getting, the JSON that's returned from that, and we're getting it right here, okay? So now that we're here, we're gonna set the state, that's all. So ingredients is now equal to data. Okay, so that's the data that's coming from the server, okay? This is not a special name. I could have called this barf. Just a variable name, that's all. Okay, it's the data that's coming from the server. And if you're noticing though, we have a problem. So remember how when you learned about bind, okay, there's the notion of this, okay? Well, right now we're referring to the wrong this, so we need to bind it, okay? Okay, so just to be clear, you're gonna do this a lot with React development, and so just know what you're binding it on, okay? So this promise comes down, and then there's this inline function, okay? This anonymous function, all right? And it's defined between these brackets. So we're calling bind on this function right here. And what we're saying is, hey, this that we want to refer to, okay, is our React component. So what I'm saying is, if we did not do bind, this .setState probably would not work. You know, depending on a lot of factors, but most likely this would not work unless we set bind here. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying, hey, let's make sure that this function right here is bound to our component here, and then we can do this .setState, etc. Otherwise, if we did this .setState, it might be referring to something over here, and setState would throw an error because it doesn't know what that is. Okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the bind lesson I talked about. Okay, so there we go. This .bind this, or function .bind this, looks good to me. Okay, component will mount. That looks good. So what we've done is we've hit the ingredients list. I'm just talking aloud. This is what I do when I code. Just try to follow the steps here. So we hit the ingredients on the server. Okay, that looks good. And we passed in the data that comes from the JSON here. And then we set the ingredients. Of course, set state is going to cause our render function to be called. And so notice here, we've got, this is bad because this is old. So what we need to do is say this .state.ingredients because that's where we're storing it now. Okay. Well, that looks good. I'm not sure there's much more we need to do. Okay, let's give it a shot. So I'm going to open my terminal here, pull it up, it disappeared on us. And we are in the Simple Express server, which is where we want to be. So what I'm going to do is run nodemon. You can just run node if you don't have nodemon installed. Server.js nodemon just takes note of any changes and restarts the server automatically. Okay, starting node server.js. Doesn't look like there's any errors. And what I like to do just to make sure things are working is run it here on my browser first. So I can say localhost and let's say 6060, and I believe the endpoint was ingredients. And as you can see, it is definitely working. You can see the JSON right there. So the server is absolutely delivering to our browser. So the reason why I do this is because if I have a problem in my code, okay, it lets me know that the problem is not with my server, it's with the application itself, because I already tested it on the server. Okay, so that's good. Our server's up and running. I'm going to press Command T to open a new window here. Go back to the desktop, and let's go ahead and go into cd http-fetch, the folder that we created this project in. And I'm going to run npm start. nvm use 4.2.2. And now I'm going to do npm start. Okay, we've got a syntax error. It is on list.jsx line 3, number 9. Okay, line 3. Oh, we forgot an equal sign. Okay, I hope you just saw what I did. All I did was I looked at the error, and it told me exactly where it was, which was line 3, character number 9. Okay, quick debugging tip. All right, so it worked this time. So all we need to do, hypothetically, if everything worked the way it needs to, we should see the exact same data that we saw when we first loaded the application, which was a list of 3 ingredients, I believe. Also notice that we did take it out of the list. So there are no ingredients here, as you can see. So if we do have data showing up on the screen, it definitely is coming from the server. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. All right, let's go into this folder here. Go into public, index.html. And sure enough, it is working. Just to make sure that, just to double check, like how magicians like, just to show you, and there's no wires and stuff, okay? Let's go over here to our HTTP service, and we can just throw a few console.logs in here, right? So console.log making request, all right? And then we can, and there we go. And then right here, I can console.log and say res, this is for the response, comma, response. We can print the response. And that looks good to me. And then lastly, we'll do one more just for fun. Let's console.log, and we're going to say data, just to show it's coming from this screen. Okay? And then let's go ahead and rerun it. Let's go to my web page. Command R. Okay. So, yeah, where's my other logs? Must be a logging error between Browserify and everything else that's going on. That's interesting. Okay, I'm not going to debug it right now. It's not a big deal. If you know the answer, that's fine. You can print it where you want. But what I do know is it definitely is printing here. We hit the callback here, so that's fine. That looks great to me. So don't mind this. Don't mind the man behind the curtain. Okay, so there you have it. Fetch is implemented here. Now, we're not doing this in the best way with React because this right here, okay, this would have to be duplicated in every component that needs access to that data. And that's, that violates the dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. Okay, so it's not the best way. We could do much better. But it's in, the basics are in, and that's how you can start interacting with a server. And so the whole point of this is we don't want to be writing all kinds of fake code here in our client and our front end. Let's just get a fake server up that has the data on it with the endpoints that what they're going to kind of look like, and then we can just make the requests here. So that's it. That's Fetch and how to make a simple GET request. Mark Price, devslopes.com, moving forward. And remember, to get your free live help, go to devslopes.com and click on chat room. I'm there all the time, as well as a huge community of other students.